Hello, I'm in Haworth again today and I'm in the graveyard of St Michael's opposite the Brontë parsonage. So I'm sure we've all walked around these stones 100 times, but I thought I would tell you about some of the stories behind some of the stones, as well as the obvious ones, the people that are connected to the parsonage and the Brontë Sisters. But there are a few, some a bit sad, some a bit strange. So come with me today and we'll go and have a look round.
Here lies Dr. John Bateman Wheelhouse, the local doctor that attended Bramwell's Brontë through his addiction and who later signed his death certificate, as well as the death certificate for Emily Brontë. He wasn't liked by Bramwell, partly for being the one to forbid him to drink, but also it seems that Dr. Wheelhouse may have had a liking to drink himself, and Bramwell knew this. He wrote a poem about Dr. Wheelhouse before he died.
Him whose name begins with wheel and ends with house. Oh, may he feel his addled brains like molten lead, Antony's fire blaze in this head. To Vita's dance distort each limb, his ears be deaf, his eyes be dim, his tongue but move to curse his fate.
Poor Dr. Wheelhouse had a hopeless task dealing with all the illness and disease within the village, so maybe this is why he drank, and this might have led to his early death at the age of 33 years old. Tucked away in the corner of the graveyard behind the Black Bull is a very plain gravestone with only JS 1796 inscribed in it. This grave is believed to belong to James Sutcliffe, a notorious highwayman who would rob people on the quiet moorland roads around Haworth. He was finally caught and charged with robbery, a capital offence. He was sentenced to execution and the date was set for the 2nd of April 1796 at York's Knaresmire Gallows. No one quite knows how his body became buried in Haworth. There are theories, of course. One is he paid for someone to take his body there after his death because he was worried his remains would be used by local surgeons to practice on, which was quite a common thing at the time. Another theory is that he was a regular at the Black Bull, a great place to sit in a corner and listen to people's plans on where and when they would be travelling. Perfect for a highwayman to do his research. He would have met and known many of the regular drinkers over the years, and some of these drinkers went to York to witness his dance at the end of the hemp, as they would say. When his body was cut down, did they bring him back to Haworth so he could be buried close to his favourite watering hole? Not far from Dr. Wheelhouse's grave is a font to mark the grave of William Grimshaw, the rector at Haworth before Patrick Brontë, who died in 1763. There is a story that a visitor one Sunday noticed men jumping out of the window of the Black Bull and over a wall. Thinking there was a fire, he went to investigate, but was told that the men had seen the parson coming with a whip to chase him into church for the sermon. Grimshaw did not oppose the pub on principle. It was run by his parish clerk and his guests often stayed there, but he did not shrink from using firm discipline to remind his flock of their spiritual duties. So I think it's very amusing that he's buried a stone's throw from the Black Bull. Maybe it will serve as a reminder to drunken men to go to church. One of the most moving gravestones within the graveyard is this one. The grave holds 7 children, with none of them living beyond 2 years old. Their parents, Elizabeth and Joseph Eaton, are also buried with them. The headstone and the carved infant were made by Joseph himself, the father of the children, who was a stonemason. How he managed to carve this, I just don't know. The sadness he must have felt was carving a stone child when his very own child was dead. It must have been overwhelming. This sad gravestone has become a bit of a focus point for many people who have also lost children themselves, and it's often decorated with flowers and gifts. To me, this gravestone highlights how many children died very young. Luckily, something that isn't so common now, and as a mum myself, it really does bring a lump to my throat. This stone always makes me smile, not in a morbid way of course, but being near the path, I often pass it and can't help but notice the age of Hannah is in a cut-out section of the stone. It seems the stonemason made a mistake and put the wrong age, so went back and cut a chunk out and carved in the correct age. I wonder what it was originally. Or maybe, for years, Hannah has told her husband that she was 35 years old and he believed her until someone in the family noticed. We'll never know. This gravestone is slightly hidden, but it holds a very sad story. Here is buried 16 children. 12 of these children aren't even named on the stone. Only one of Mary and Richard Whittaker's children made it to adulthood, but she died not long after her father, aged only 19 years old. A startling reminder to how hard life was back then. I wonder what they called the 12 children. I couldn't come to the graveyard and not visit the grave of dear Tabitha, or Tabby as we all know her by. Tabby, the servant for the Brontë family, lived to a grand age of 85 years old. Her grave is close to the wall next to the parsonage, but her stone is hard to read from years of weather. She started working at the parsonage in 1825 and was a loyal servant for 30 years. Brontë children loved Tabby's stories of fairies and ghosts, and I'm sure that these tales played a big part in their writing. Tabby was also good at getting the local gossip, so I'm sure she would have updated the family on all the local going-ons and, again, give the Brontë sisters and Bromwell ideas for their own stories. In a very elaborate tombstone, again near the wall to the parsonage, is Martha Brown. Martha started working for the Brontës when she was only 12 years old and stayed with them until Patrick died. Her father, John Brown, was the village sexton, and his wife Mary are also buried here. The height of the tomb allows you to see it just over the wall was in the parsonage front garden. It's nice to think that all the people who've worked for the Brontës and know the Brontës are all so close together. Hopefully, they're watching over the village and the parsonage. I have a soft spot for dear Thomas the cat, a rather modern grave compared to the other occupants in the nearby graveyard, but an important figure nonetheless. Around the early 2000s there was a large black and white cat called Thomas, who was a well-known character around Haworth. He had a very good home but filled his days visiting the Tourist Information Centre for milk and a comfortable sleep on his chair in the mornings, and in the afternoons he would snooze on the front step of the Brontë parsonage. He ignored the tourists who often photographed and admired him, and even ignored Tony Blair when he visited the parsonage. He became a much-loved regular at the parsonage by the staff, and when he sadly passed away at the grand age of 15 years old, the staff had a plaque put in the parsonage garden next to a catnip bush to remember him by. And not forgetting the Brontë family within a vault under the church and marked by a stone on the wall. The stone was moved when the church was rebuilt and it cracked, but it still hangs close to the site of the family. The vault is sealed and no one quite knows the exact location under the floor, but based on the plans from the rebuilt church, they think it's about here. Of course, Anne Brontë, the youngest, isn't buried here with her family, but was in Scarborough when she died. I've done a video about her final days if you want to know more. The church, St Michael's and All Saints, is visited by hundreds of people every year to visit the spot the Brontës are buried, and often flowers are left against the pillar as a sign of remembrance to this unique and legendary family. If you'd like a copy of this map for your next visit in Haworth, I've popped it on my website for you to download. The link's in the description below.
So it's ever so windy, if you haven't already guessed, and I hope you can hear me. Oh my goodness, it has rained on and off all day today, so I've had raincoat on, raincoat off. But I've had a look around Haworth's graveyard and I hope you've enjoyed learning about some of these stones. I must warn you though, it's quite dangerous because some of the graves obviously have, say, 10 people deep, and you can imagine over years of them deteriorating, there's a chance they could fall through. So always be careful when you're wandering around a graveyard, especially here in Haworth, because there are so many people in it. I'm going to say goodbye here before I get blown away. Hair's going everywhere. Thanks for coming with me today. Do all that likey, subscribey business that YouTube wants us to do, because it really helps. Thanks, Tree. It really helps me out and lets YouTube know that we want to watch more Brontë content. So thank you very much. So join me next Friday for more Brontë adventures. See you soon. Bye.